And action. And here we go. Welcome, everybody. It is PnP Weekly, episode 140. It is 25th of October, 2021. See, I'm learning. It's not 2022 yet. It's the years go by, and it's just.
It's always right. And I mean, by the time you learn, it's going to be 2022, and you're like,
that's true. Yeah, that is so true. I think the year has completely lost its kind of a meaning within this situation where we are. So I guess that's the reason.
It's Monday.
Exactly.
Whatever that means nowadays,
Monday,
right?
Whatever that means. So anyway, in the PnP Weekly, we talk about the latest in Microsoft 365 platform. So the latest news from Microsoft, and then some community news as well. Not all of them, but straight a few of the points. And then we typically have a visitor as well. So this time we have Simon Ågren, directly from Sweden, northern Sweden actually, and apparently there was snow on his backyard. So it's already getting a bit snowy in the northern Finland and Sweden, and I guess Norway isn't because of the coastline. Anyway, that's a separate discussion. That was all about you.
On PnP Weekly, we talk about M365 platform calendar days and weather across Europe.
Yes, that's what we do. But let's jump to the interview with Simon, and then we come back on the articles right after that. So jump in. So let's actually get moving. So thank you, Simon, for joining us on the PnP Weekly episode 140. I think it's season 4. You've been actually in the show before, and we had a good chat before we started recording. That let's please remember to put the recording on this time, because last time we talked about like 30 minutes and realizing that, darn, the recording is not on.
Okay, guys, let's get this going. Let's talk for 5 minutes, and then we just go,
Exactly. That's a good discussion. Anyway,
it always is.
Now, right? Can you, Simon, quickly do an introduction? Who are you? What do you do for a living?
Sure. I'm Simon. Some call me King of the North. It's not because I'm good at anything. It's just because I live very far up north in Sweden, and we have a lot of snow all the time, and we have 1 week of summer, basically.
Is it already snowing?
I don't want to tell.
It is still snowing.
Yeah, has the summer arrived?
On the roofs here. Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
It's lovely. Yeah. Let's move on. Yeah, I'm an office dev
the snow.
for 3 years, and still going quite strong. But yeah, I've been taking some breaks now because I have a new role as well. I started working for Advania. I don't know how we say it in English. I've only heard it in Swedish. So, and I also work at a specialist unit named Knowledge Factory within Advania. So we try to, how do you say, compromise or bring all the best people together, and then they have me as well. So yeah. So I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah, that's basically it. And I also got a promotion recently. So I'm now Chief Technical Architect, or CTA, or Chief Janitor, whatever you want to call me. So,
yes.
So what does that mean? What do you do in your work?
Yeah, what does it actually mean? Fancy words.
I'm a consultant, so I work with customers. Now I'm working as a solution architect at a customer, and in a organizational role for once. So I'm on the customer side now. I'm always on the customer side, but on the customer side of customers. Yeah.
Yes.
And so what I do, I focus on modern work now, because we had people for a very long time within Knowledge Factory focusing on more infrastructure, and we have people that used to build the AD Sync tool and have been at Microsoft, and they're big names within that, but I didn't know them before because I come from this other world, So now we're focusing on modern work as well and trying to build a good team. So I've been focused on recruitment, and hopefully we'll see some cool people soon. But otherwise, I think it's more about community and governance. So, trying to build a community internally for whole Advania, but also like governance is more escalation routes, 4 ICE principles during customer deliveries, and trying to create clarity between delivering contracts and ensuring quality and blah 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 blah. Things like that. So basically, if the shit hits the fan, it's my fault.
Yeah. So now that you're a chief technical architect, does it mean that you're still writing code for the customer projects?
No, not that much.
Deep side.
Part of my free time, or
But that is your background, right? So you're an Office Dev MVP, and you come from that kind of building for cloud and M365 and Teams and Graph and SharePoint and all of that. Right?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I think I'm like, Victor Villain, he's very involved. He's much more involved than I am. But I think he does the same. He's been more business involved, but he also likes to write code a lot.
Yep.
So that is why I'm still Office Dev MVP, because that is how I like to contribute when I have time to contribute to the community. Yep. So yeah, and it also keeps me on toes, to understand what we can do and cannot do.
Exactly.
All the things. So, yeah, I think it's valuable.
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely is. So in modern work, right? So you mentioned that you're involved in modern work, right?
Yeah.
So which workloads of M365 do you work with?
All of them.
Yeah, all of them.
And then some.
Modern work could be this, or it could be this. And I'm gonna answer this question in high value complexity. No, I'm just kidding. So it depends on the people we get. We never, in Knowledge Factory, we need a person as a project manager. Then we add that person, because we try to add the people that we believe in, that they are similar to the MVP mentality and things like that. We have a sharing culture, humble people, and then we try to build it around them. So I'd say we used to only work with more the infrastructure, the more behind the scenes things. And now we're trying to come a bit closer to the end users. And I'm thinking like we are mostly trusted advisors, more strategic level, but also, I'm seeing that we could work with, service adoption, more technical implementers, because we also need that if we want to be, a couple of people on the same customer and things like that. So it depends. I'm going to give you the consultant.
Of course
answer.
It does.
Yeah.
Of course,
but we have people doing like enterprise mobility in tune, but also want to move into governance, the technical aspects, but also maybe even, educating or understanding how it is to implement something in Teams. So, the end users in Teams are going to use the devices, and we need to think about all those things. How will that experience be for them as well?
And also, so I assume a part of your job is not only to look at what is available out of the box, but also to extend it to customers' needs, right? Yeah. Where do you see your customers look at, like which areas do they look at the most? Is it more the Power Platform, or is it more custom dev, or is it all over the place?
What's currently the hot thing? What you're seeing with customers?
I think one hot thing is Viva, like the concept of Viva, and it's spawned in marketing, I'd say, but I think it has a huge potential, and Viva connections, the extensibility there as well. But I think most of the times now I end up in Sweden, we have customers that have a need to be helped in a strategic way, maybe like, okay, we have implemented Microsoft 365. What do we do now? Are we done? And they have no way to measure how it's going, to see where the quick wins are, what they should focus on. And so that's basically where I try to help them. But it could be Power Platform, governance, it could be, environment strategy, it could be architecting, those things. But as of right now, I have only been, able to help them at the strategic level. But depends on what people we bring in as well, because I think there's, huge possibility to help out end to end more, or whatever you want to say. So yeah.
Now, you said something really interesting actually there related on what customers are asking, and that comes up every now and then with the, depending of course to who do we talk to, but how do you measure success? What would be, do you have any tips, or is it a company secrets on how do you do that? But
it depends.
It depends.
Of course it depends, but some examples. So
yeah, I've been looking a lot at the what is it called now? The it stands still in my head. The community-driven, the maturity model for
maturity model,
Microsoft 365 maturity.
As a way to talk about where you are.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that there are possibilities to go in and do a quick overview and try to establish where we are and talk in general, maybe at the company level, and then try to focus on the areas that we should focus on depending on the situation, and then because you get a quick gap analysis if you kind of like, we are here but we want to be here, and then you could try to implement a roll-up plan. What should we focus on first? How do we get there? So then you could talk about this, but you don't have to talk about it in a super technical way. You could talk about it at the ROI level as well. So this is what we should do.
Of investment.
Yeah, and then we try to dive into, okay, what do we do technically? And that's where I think it's super good to know as well. What could we do with teams? Could we bring in bots? Could we do all those things? So I'd say I'm a hybrid in that way. I'm not a solution architect only working with not caring about the technology, but I like to bring it up at the strategic level. Okay, we have teams right now. That's good. Now we could work with that. But it's not how do we work best with teams. I like to, raise it the level and just, but what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And then, move into,
which for sure is a really good question. Sorry, Simon, on jumping there, but it's and that's where the maturity level for Microsoft 365, which is, by the way, an absolutely brilliant assets by two assets and Mark and Emily and a few others. And by the way, they're looking for contributors for those who are listening or watching this, so people can contribute. It is a community-driven open source mentality, but in docs, and it helps on having that strategic discussion and evaluating where the customer is from a maturity level perspective. So really cool stuff for sure. Mm-hmm. But what you were saying is actually what we're more and more seeing what our partners are doing as well, which is not just the technical implementation, because you need to know why you are implementing this technical thing. It would be just cool to invent stuff, right, and do stuff, but then why are you doing that? What are you trying to accomplish?
I mean, that's the fun part, as you say. I mean, when I was junior, if someone would say, could you implement a horse in this wall? I would like, yeah, that sounds like a cool challenge. I would try to code this. It's just a metaphor. I wouldn't put a horse in a wall, but
this is a family show. We're not going to do that. So.
But it makes no sense doing it. So even I could learn. So that's good.
So I think, like everyone else, you noticed probably over the last year and a half or so that there was a huge shift from working in the office to working remotely. Companies moving more to asynchronous work, to working on teams. Where do you see customers with whom you work are on this stage? Are they already comfortable to work on teams, or do they still learn? And with that, like, where are they on the maturity level with regards to remote working and hybrid working?
I think that it depends. No, but some are very mature, and I mean, people are realizing that, because I've heard arguments that you can't just stop by someone like you used to do, like, okay, so Waldek, this thing to just tap you on the shoulder, but you could, but it's more of a, and I don't know if it's a generational thing. People that are super used to chatting, from gaming or whatever, they're used to hanging out in Skype or TeamSpeak or whatever. But I think that, you know, slowly people are realizing that I could just hit someone up on the chat real quickly and get an answer. This is super efficient. I don't have to have meetings all the time. And some companies, they still have a problematic meeting culture.
Yeah.
With 5 parallel meetings that you should jump between. But I think there's a lot of potential, and that is one thing that you could, you know, roll out something technically. But I think we have a lot of potential to help them out, you know, finding these things out. What are the nuggets here? What are the good things that you could do to increase productivity? Because I think sometimes this is philosophical right now, but I think sometimes we confuse being busy as being productive. So we like to keep busy all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you know what to do, you just do it. But if you know why you're doing it, you try to do it more. You try to do it more efficiently. You try to do less to do your thing. So I think this Simon Sinek that said it once. But yeah, someone smart.
Yeah.
And he has the same name as you, so
yeah,
that's
exactly. No, but I think
it's got to be good, right? It's got to be good.
Yeah, exactly.
We could do there. And I don't know, what do you feel about how? Okay, maybe you can't say it, but Microsoft then.
So I'm coming back on the unhealthy, let's say, meeting culture and all of that. Yeah. So one thing what I at least see quite often is that it originates quite often from the lack of willingness of making decisions. So you're trying to pass the decision making to an authority, and therefore you need to have the meeting so that the authority can basically say up and down, or are we going to do this or not? But that drives then if it's a larger organization, it drives the organization to a wrong path, because then that means that the decision maker has to be in every freaking meeting to make the thumbs up or thumbs down, and that's not efficient. We certainly, and I guess that's part of the maturity level of the employees, or the experience level, that are they willing to make decisions, because making the decision is the key point, rather than delaying. Except in Sweden, where you have the diskutera culture. Just kidding.
and fika, we have to do a lot of fika.
Yes, exactly. So, but yeah, so I think that's something what I've seen, especially in the global scale. So I have meetings with the teams across the world, and quite often one of the challenges what we see in this larger company is that the teams in the different countries or regions don't feel that they are empowered to make a decision. So they're always looking decision makers from Redmond, and that can be insanely complex because there's quite a few time zones, and that means that the meetings can be at 11 p.m. or 7 a.m. in the morning or whatever. So to make those decisions. So,
yeah.
But what do you see?
On the other hand, I think the interesting part is also the idea that, like, there is the work in the office, there is the hybrid work, but these two to me are different than asynchronous work. And I think currently we are in the stage where we try to replicate synchronous work on Teams, right? So we're remote, but we still try to work synchronously. So we have meetings, we expect answers immediately. The way we organize our work, we need to have answers immediately, because otherwise we're stuck. So I think there's yet another wave of work change for us to go through, where we really embrace asynchronous work. So, like, no matter where you are, you don't default to a meeting, don't default to let's talk about things. No, like, default should actually be that you choose to write your thoughts on paper or in a deck or whatever, and share that, and you share it with everyone from whom you need to have input. You give them a day or two to go through, and then you get back pros and cons, decision points, if any, questions, and you come to conclusion. And that doesn't need to be a synchronous thing. Like, you need to be like that group of folks from whom you need to have input has to be here and now at this point in time. If you're not there, you miss out, and only then we can make decision or not.
Yeah. One of the challenges, though, on that kind of a way of working is that the person who's asking that input need to have the experience enough to make that decision based on the input, right? So and that's probably one of the things I could say, what we will see in the future more, where we start empowering and allowing people to make those decisions, because it's better to make a decision and then make another decision to correct that decision in later form if that was a wrong decision, rather than just waiting for things to actually happen.
I also think that having a second, if people could have more seconds, not seconds in time, but if you are away, then you have someone that could do your work, so you overlap a little bit. I think that's essential as well. So we need to allow people to be able to make decisions, but also have people with that complement each other and that also could do your work.
Yeah, and also, but for that to work, you also need to work in a way that you get things out of your head. Because if I replace you, but everything is still in your head, I cannot do my work, or I cannot do your work.
True.
So in other words, like, we need to default more to getting things out of our head, putting them somewhere, share them with others. And even though, and that is also an interesting thing, right? We had software, we had technology that allow us to share things for ages, all the way from the Z drive or Z drive, depending where in the world you are, to SharePoint.
The ancient Romans were doing this anyway.
Exactly, right? And still, we default no, let's talk about it. Yeah. But that doesn't work. That's such a inefficient way of doing things, and yet we choose so often to do that as the de facto way of coming up to a decision.
I think you have a valid point. I think it's super good, and I mean, I try to do that as well. I don't know, in general, because I have a hard time to write something perfect to begin with. So I try to just get it out there and then reiterate and let people look at it, or me look at it again, or something like that. So because sometimes it's just good to get it out there, the thoughts, the ideas, and then we work from it. So
but that's again a human persona thing, right? You need to be able to be vulnerable enough to put it out there for somebody to criticize and give feedback. Because, and one thing on that one, feedback is providing feedback is not criticization. It's actually providing additional value and empowering the person who's requesting the feedback. Of course,
but how is that different between a meeting and working asynchronously? If you share your thoughts and ideas in a meeting, or you put it on paper,
it isn't.
It isn't, exactly, right? So, but then that's
the cultural change. Sorry, Waldek, that's cultural change.
It is.
Sure, and then you need to have the time to do that, so you're not sitting in the meetings, right? So chicken and an egg situation. So
well, then could you write a white paper on this?
There are books on it already. Right, so I wouldn't invent anything new, right? But there's also this interesting aspect to it that made me realize how important it is. A few years back, I worked with a person who was on every call, we all knew that person had opinions and they were experienced and they would have input to share. But they were a person, and in a way, I am the same way. When I hear about something new, I need time to go through it. I need to sit on it. I need to think. If we are in a meeting, you will get my primary response, which will often miss a lot of stuff because you want me to respond to it in an instant. I'm hearing about something new, and you expect me to know everything and give you immediate yes or no or whatever, right? So in other words, because if you have people like that on your team, and you probably do, right? You will not get the most out of your team. You will miss out. You will not be able to use their skills because you'll force them to work in a different way than the way they handle input, right? So you also need to think about that. If you need to be inclusive of that and empower them to work in the best way, right?
But I think essentially it comes back to a very specific definition of what we hear all the time, that we need to embrace diversity. We can't create copies of ourselves. We need to see that, okay, Vesa, he's super good at doing this and working this way. Let's try to use that, not enforce him to work in some way that is not productive, that is not happy, and whatever. So
yeah,
I think
but it is an easy thing to do, right? Because we used to work in
easy thing
specific
to do?
way. No, yes, well, it is, right? Because like we used to work in offices. What is the first thing that we do? We are being forced to work remotely. So the first thing that we do is we copy what we used to do in one form online.
Lift and shift.
Bearing the fact that, oh, well, we're not in the office anymore. People have lives. People have their own planning. People do different things.
Yeah.
And now we kind of try to squeeze the same form of work into a different context, right? And that doesn't always work.
Absolutely. But I still wouldn't say that it's an easy thing to do, to transition away from this.
It's easy way to try to. So with that, what I mean, it's easy way to do to try to grasp, to replicate what you used to do, because you're familiar with that.
Exactly.
So that is the easy choice, not to try to, no, let's reset everything, reassess our environment and work with that. No. We used to do this there. Let's do the same thing here, but now on Teams. It's like, really?
Yeah, I think when you think about the situation 18 months ago, I think everybody was just forced to just rethink and relocate, shift and learn basically to a new way of doing. And of course, you replicate how you're doing that. Now we're 18 months from that moment, or roughly.
And we still do the same.
We'll still do the same. So I guess we'll see the transition to happen sooner or later. But as an example, my wife used to work at the office before the situation happened, 1 or 2 days remotely. And now they have a completely new role, which is once a month remote on office, which is like, well, okay, that's pretty cool. So
different.
The way of the situation then forcing the companies to adapt, because nobody wants to go back in the previous work model. So,
well, but with that, the question is, did they only change the place of work? Or do they also work asynchronously? For example, do they change the way they work?
Well, it depends again on the company. Not every single company needs to work asynchronously, because they're not expected to work asynchronously, because they're basically expected to be in a certain time frame available. In our work, of course, what we do, it's different. And the blue collar people, completely different again. It all depends.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your context, and it depends on how available you need to be during those times. And I mean, that goes into what you were saying, Waldek, that maybe you don't need to be available at those times, but let's say you are. But when I was coding more, I was during this pre-summer, I would say, I could just I can't get any work done. So then I was like, okay, let's go. I'll go for 9 holes playing golf and in the snow. No, and then I just came back and did like 3 hours.
Red balls.
Yeah, exactly.
Super efficient. Because I mean, it makes no sense really to just sit there and just when you can't get stuff done and you're like, yeah, let's go. I should take a break, but now I'm a zombie. And then you're a mess the entire evening. Then you're like lying in the sofa and in a child pose.
It didn't work. I didn't ship anything. Yeah.
I didn't.
Now let's switch quickly gears, because I wanted to still touch. We're bit of longer again on the schedule, but we're expecting this happens always. But really good discussion. But what we wanted to
we're recording, so that is
we're recording, so that's good. What we also wanted to touch is your contributions on the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, because you actually did a pretty important new contribution on the Graph Toolkit quite recently. Can you talk about that one, and why did you do that? You worked for free for Microsoft. What's with this?
It all started with we doing all the blog posts, a lap around the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So then I got to know a couple of Elise, Better, and Nicola as well, and Beth, and I don't know, I kind of like fell in love with the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, even though I wasn't using it that much. And I felt that providers, that is a cool thing, because I wrote about it. I'm like, I like the complexity of it, but I like all the things happening inside of them. And then I just saw that single sign-on in Teams finally here. How could we implement this? So then I just talked to Nicola, and I was like, okay, what do you think? Should I just look at it? Yeah, sure, look at it. And then we started having, it took a lot of time because we needed to change it 55 times because of reasons. So integrated with the Teams toolkit, and then there's a new Teams toolkit. There were some decisions with identity. What could we do? What can't we do? But then we started to having, you know, weekly meetings, just hanging out, talking about the code, you know, pair programming. I showed my decisions I made, and then finally we decided to, you know, do a new version of it that was using MSL2. So we got it a little bit safer, but at the same time to make sure it was built on the old one, so we could use it both with single sign-on and without single sign-on, and try to make it flexible for the user or the developer to use it. And yeah, that's basically the story.
And now it's part of the official Microsoft Graph Toolkit was released with the, is it 2.3? What was it? 2.4?
Yeah.
2.3. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
My memory works.
I think it's good. I mean, we could always discuss what is a safe backend, whatever, but I think it's cool that you could use any backend you like. You could use something in .NET Core. You could use something in TypeScript or Node, whatever you want to use, basically, and it works. I'd say, if you know how to implement it.
Yes, if you have the expertise.
Yeah,
everything is easy if you know how to do that, right?
Yeah, you know, the Graph Toolkit is all about making it very easy for the developer, right? Yeah. So it's not that hard when you implement it. There are all a couple of things that we always need to do when it comes to Teams development, right? And when we want to test it and all those things. But I mean, you could use it now in Yo Teams. You could use it in the Teams toolkit. You could use it in your own implementation. So I think it's powerful, and it also gives a really good end user, you know, experience when you don't have to log in while you're being in Teams, because all the third party or all the applications, a bot, whatever, you know, it's a third party application. So
yeah.
That was the thought, that you need some security around it, right? So you need to log in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but then you also don't have the experience that you signed into Teams already. So why do I need to sign in again to this app? Like, I'm signed in already. Like, just take it, you know? I want to use this thing.
But now,
it was super fun. It was really, really fun. And it was really fun to, you know, because I felt like I got being a part of the team a little bit. So it was super fun hanging out with them, and you know, I think it was a mutual good experience. So yeah,
that was my follow-up question. It's more on like, why are you spending your own time on contributing on open source and community? What's the mindset of that?
I don't know. I think it's about, you know, I don't consider me always be, you know, never been the best developer, but I have always had I've always been curious, eager to learn. And I'll always, even since I was a junior, I was like, have you seen you could use objects in .NET? Look here. And then they have been working for 10 years, like, Simon, sit down and relax. So always
objects,
you know, when I see something good, I really want to share it with other people as well, because they could use it possibly. And helping out with something like this that is being consumed by many people, it's fulfilling, I would say. And I also like, you know, sometimes when you get into the coding, because it's not that often, I could sit there for hours and just, you know, think about these things, being in the zone and just having fun with it. So it's kind of relaxing, I would say. Sometimes it's stressful, but it's relaxing in general. Yeah,
I think it's the same what you mentioned with Victor Villen as an example. So as a work time on your office hours, you're doing something completely different, but then you still want to relate back on the times of writing code and providing value for others as well. So.
And I also want to keep track on things, you know, what's happening inside of identity. And I mean, identity is big, but it's not trivial, I'd say. So it's really good to know what's happening with MSOL and things like that as well, and what's happening with all our frameworks, because I think it's great to know what's possible and what's not possible, and why you should do things, why you shouldn't do things, because it also adds to the bigger picture of the bigger general picture, I'd say. So yeah.
All of the identity and Azure stuff is basically how we enable and build stuff to M365. So therefore, understanding the whole stack is quite important for sure. Now, I think we've gone over time again. So it would have been really awesome, awesome to continue discussion. But I guess it's better to close up so we don't have to cut down the discussion either. But thank you, Simon, for joining us on this discussion. Really good to catch up as well. It's been a while actually. You were in the show. I can't remember which episode. Many seasons ago. Maybe.
Moons ago.
Moons ago. Yes.
Eons ago.
Eons ago. We met moons. Yeah.
Well, if you weren't going to the Collab Summit, right? But you're going, Vesa.
No. Yes, I will be there. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be staying at the speaker hotel as well, so I'm gonna bother you in the bar.
Okay. Why are you expecting me to be in the bar? Never mind. Now, maybe for one.
You need water.
That's true.
Food.
Well, actually, seeing people is super important. That's what the Collab Summit is all about. It's not even necessarily sitting in the sessions. It's all about meeting and networking and meeting people, because I think everybody has been waiting for creating for the time of meeting people. The South Coast Summit was 2 weeks ago, and everybody was providing a lot of good feedback around actually meeting people. So but anyway, thank you, Simon, for joining. We'll catch up more in Düsseldorf for sure. Thank you, Waldek, again joining on this one, and we'll flip actually back on the articles right after this. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Simon. Bye.
Cool. So thank you, Simon, one more time, and like fifth times already saying that, but thank you for a really good discussion. I think it was really cool discussion related on let's say, the transition of the work and how most likely we'll see another big change sooner or later. I think the asynchronous way of working is a really interesting topic. You by the way, Waldek said during the interview that there are books about it and all of that. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Putting on
I think, yeah. So I'm trying to remember a title. I think there's one from the founders of Basecamp.
Okay.
And I think it's called Remote. That is one. And then another one was, I think, also from them. I think it was called something like, it doesn't need to be crazy in the office, something along these lines. So I think like these are two that stayed in my mind the most when I think about asynchronous work. And I think also there was
everything what you do is basically quite asynchronous, because your team members are in Australia and in US and you're in Europe, and it has to work still, right?
Well, it's remote. I wouldn't say it's always asynchronous, because we have our fair share of meetings. And if you ask me personally, I try to work asynchronously as much as I can, because I don't want, I acknowledge that we are across the world. Like my team spans from Hawaii on one hand to Australia in the other.
Yep, they're
pretty
close.
There's
actually, they're not.
So so that's the interesting part, right? Like there are 3 hours away, but on a different day. Yeah. So the gap isn't that much. It's almost the same time, but it's different day. It was it's weird, right? But either way, the way I work, I try to plan as few calls as I can, because I acknowledge that just the same way I prefer not to stay until 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. in calls. Yeah. I don't want others to do that too. And there's nothing I require. There's nothing in my work that requires people to meet face to face, really, or meet live, to be anywhere at a given point in time. No, I can get my ideas on paper and have them go through it, provide our feedback and comments, and we can work that way. But it just requires this mind shift that you need to get whatever you have on your mind on paper, get clarity, define what is the objective, open things, get all of that out, right? So that is I think a bigger change that is another angle to hybrid work and remote work, right? So there is this work in the office, there is remote work, hybrid work, but and asynchronous work is a whole different topics that I didn't see us talk that much yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And well, good example in my case is that I work like said during the interview as well. I work with the teams in China, India, and then in Redmond, and then trying to find a matching time for everybody is pretty much impossible. So it's just it's really, really hard. But something what I was saying really closely, because I'm mentoring those development teams which are being established in China and India, is the trying to provide them the trust and empowering them to make their own decisions, because there's an understandable reason. We as a Microsoft, we have a headquarters in Redmond, and there's where the things are getting led and basically requested then from this developer centers. So there's this understandable, we need to get everything approved, but do you really need to get every single thing approved? Can you make those decisions by yourself and then report on a monthly basis or bi-weekly related on the progress? So communication absolutely still important, but do you really need to make all of the decisions done by a separate authority? Can't you own things? And that's something which is, it's a cultural thing as well, which is hard in certain cultures to take that ownership and taking the trusting yourself to make a decision. So
yeah, and again even then, right? So imagine that you, for one reason or another, you need to have a call to get decision on something. Like I recall once I managed to do it in a way that ahead of the meeting, right? So let's say I would need a decision by the end of the week. So I planned a meeting with a group of folks on Wednesday. A week before that, I shared with them a PowerPoint that had the idea, 3 options, pros and cons, and what I recommend. Basically, we met on Wednesday for like 5 or 10 minutes because everybody pre-read everything. Like it might have been as well email, but it's like sometimes you want to see people, maybe they want to ask stuff, or maybe, but the whole meeting was really short because everyone knew everything. People will brief. They had a chance to go through it, to think about it, share their questions. So like the meeting was really short.
And then you basically save 20 minutes from the 30 minutes already to prep for a next meeting or next chunk, or have a more productive time or family time. Who knows?
Exactly.
And that's something what we see more and more also in general in Microsoft and in our organization. As an example, the pre-meeting. It's the meeting version 2.0 or whatever initiative, which is basically prepping everybody, sending the stuff advance, making sure that people have the needed information. So meeting wouldn't be necessarily even needed. So which is the key. Anyway, so let's jump on the articles and go through what has happened within the last week, and then we'll chat a bit more.
Yep.
So last Monday, so we as a Microsoft, we released the Microsoft Teams developer portal with the title of Manager Microsoft Teams app with the developer portal. That sounded really weird. Anyway, so we released the Microsoft Teams developer portal. So that's been in preview for a while, and now it's G8. So it was going to preview in build 2021. And basic idea is that you can control and manage all of the applications in your development environment or in a production environment from this one location. So it's basically you go there and you authenticate against the tenant, which you then operate against. And Teams Toolkit V2 is among other things is talking with this one as well. So it's all getting kind of integrated. Key point to understand here is that it's actually is deprecating also the App Studio. So the App Studio is going to go away in the Microsoft Teams, and this is replacement of that one. So really cool stuff from Karthik and the team related on the implementation. So awesome stuff. Now, the next news was around developing real-time collaboration apps with Azure, Microsoft 365 Power Platform, and GitHub. That's a really cool combination for super cool things getting tied in together in a storyline to explain how to build real-time collaborative apps. And Dan Walling is basically have the intro of the event, which is happening on October 26th. So actually on the day when this video should be released, because it's 26th.
Yes.
Now, we also announced the SharePoint Framework 1.13 going GA. So extending Microsoft Viva Connection is now G8, which is really, really good. One point here, just to note, so the Viva Connection isn't yet G8. So the platform is now G8, which is a bit of confusing, but you can already build Viva Connection extensibility, and then Viva Connection will go GA within a matter of weeks or days, so pretty soon. So,
depending on when you watch this.
Exactly, depending on when you're watching the video. So a few pointers about 1.13. So there's release notes and all of that available. We'll improve documentation gradually for sure. We also worked with you, Waldek, on creating the Extend Microsoft Viva Connection learning path. So that's available, free learning to get started on doing this stuff with the hands-on labs and all of that. Also referencing to videos, so really cool video, overview video from Ed Everett, my manager, explaining what is the Viva Connection extensibility options, and then Patrick Rogers' absolutely spot on video on showing the different techniques, how to get started on building those adaptive card components. So there's a lot of like deep linking to the Microsoft Teams application and all of that, because Viva Connection adaptive cards is kind of a, how would I put it? It's the quick view or quick insights on the application, which is actually hosted in Teams. So there's a direct relationship with that card in a 99% of the cases with an application in Microsoft Teams. So really cool stuff. And then some future plans and what the SPFX is all about. Now, moving on the news, there was a guest blog and a video from Norm Young in the SharePoint blog related on customizing lists best practices. So Norm is a community MVP who has done a lot of learnings related on those options, and there's a cool video showing different techniques as well. So how do we take advantage of Microsoft lists into SharePoint or outside of the SharePoint, and then extending that with flows and automation and all of that. So really, really cool stuff, integrations to Teams and all of that. So really, really, really cool stuff. Now, this one was interesting. It took a while for us to actually figure out what was this? How 3 makers, 2 devs, and a princess came together to save kittens for a hackathon. So a bit of a complex scenario, not really when you actually understand that. But basic idea here is that the volunteers who are driving in the UK, when they're seeing a petrol station, they can use the flick button to indicate which petrol
volunteers
station.
For what?
For saving kittens. For saving kittens. Yes, so that's a good point. Volunteers for saving kittens, as they go through the UK, saving kittens, they need petrol. So, and then they need to know which gas station has petrol, because there's the petrol shortage. Right now.
Yeah.
So obviously pretty far-fetched kind of a scenario, but actually really cool technology is combined with the Dataverse and Power Automate and all of that stuff. So really, really cool implementation for sure. And then eventually you can actually see which of the petrol stations have fuel and which don't, based on the reports from this massive fleet of people who are saving cats. So I love the fact that there's even a logo designed for this application.
Of course there is. Of course, it always starts with the name and logo. Exactly. The name and the logo.
Yes, absolutely.
You might have not anything else. Yes. You need to have a name and a logo.
Yes, absolutely. That's how you do the pitch for the elevator pitch for the angel investors. So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you have? Well, we have a name and a logo. Okay, cool. Here's Kachilia.
Imagine we want to improve the world.
It doesn't work like that, by the way. Now, CLI for Microsoft 365 4.1. What I want to talk about here, Waldek.
Correct. So last week we released new version of CLI for Microsoft 365. Is the version 4.1. The most important feature is the ability to upgrade your SharePoint framework projects to the version 1.13, which allows you then to make use of the new improvements to build for Viva connections. And then along with that, we introduced some minor improvements. We introduced a command to update information about users in AD. So with that, I would encourage you to upgrade, give it a try. And there's also a link that takes you to the full release notes.
Yep, Excellent, good stuff. And it's good to have just to be clear, technically the CLI for Microsoft 365 doesn't upgrade your solution. It gives you the list of actions which you need to apply to upgrade the solution. But
as well as script that you can run.
Sure.
A command line script you can run.
Yes, exactly. So it's a safe thing to test out and understand the needed steps. So it doesn't all of a sudden, it doesn't go and start modifying your solution structure and you're freaking out that, hey, what's happened? Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this one is really good from Simon Doy, connecting SharePoint Online to on-premises databases with SharePoint Framework. And this is actually quite classic scenario, so to say. So how would I surface, for example, let's say the latest sales figures from LOB system in on-premises in the front page of my Viva Connection desktop, or something like that. And that sounds really impressive, by the way. Now, there's two different ways of doing this, and Simon is basically taking the route of doing connected query directly to the on-premises, which will then use Azure Relay between, and then there's a set of API permissions which the SPFX solution is then hitting on, and then technically that's the money piece, which is there's an Azure Relay which is then routing and having that connectivity between on-premises. Now, the classic alternative way of doing this, there's nothing wrong on this one. This is completely valid, and alternative option, though, would be to replicate the needed on-premises data or just the reporting data to an Azure SQL database. And then, therefore, the connectivity is from the cloud to cloud rather than cloud to on-prem. So, again, depends on.
Well, but then and also the interesting case is like the moment that imagine that you have an ACE that you want to use, let's say, to book a well-being day that needs to be tracked in your on-premises HR system, right? So it's not only read, it's also
when you're
write.
Writing back. Exactly. That's true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, the replication style on writing back wouldn't really be that useful. But if you're presenting data, I guess it's a bit of a safer way of doing that. But again, it depends on the scenario. But really good to get the storyline included. So really cool stuff. Then there was a blog post from Arjun Menon, Azure Cloud Shell issue when using CLI for Microsoft 365 workaround. You can actually talk about this one, Waldek, right?
Yeah, so since a while, you can use CLI for Microsoft 365 in the Azure Cloud Shell, which is a great way to use CLI directly in browser. You don't need to install anything, it's just there. There is the caveat though. Azure Cloud Shell uses Node v8, which is pretty old by now. And unfortunately, the version of CLI that is available now doesn't work with Node v8. So Arjun writes about a workaround that you can use to upgrade the version of Node to use NVM, the Node version manager, to install newer version of Node that you can then use with CLI.
Yeah. Gets pretty complicated. You might think that Azure Cloud Shell would actually update to the later version of Node sooner or later. So
they intend to. The challenging part is that they use Node for many things, and apparently there are dependencies that they need to test. So it's more than just updating. They also need to check a bunch of things, right? So, but still, yeah.
Exactly. But it's still 8 is pretty old. 8 is really old.
Yeah.
So. Now, Laura Rogers had a really cool blog post, Connect Modern SharePoint Web Parts. Classic, actually, scenario, which has been supported for quite a long time, but it's something what people don't necessarily even understand that they can do. So you can easily connect web parts in the SharePoint or Viva Connection, and then do a kind of a lookups and selecting and filtering between the web parts as well. So you can actually build quite interesting and cool looking scenarios, for example, selecting a file on the left side and then showing that on the right side. So there's a lot of options available on those web parts. And it's been supported for quite a long time, but it's also pretty well hidden between on the 3 dots. And there's also a video available for showing that as well. So really cool stuff. Then Mark D. Anderson from Synpraxis Consulting had a sparsely populated SharePoint complex column and Power BI. So if we want to surface Power BI reports from a SharePoint list data, so how do we actually get, for example, the display name or display value explicitly from a complex column types? So that's basically what this is all about. And complex column types being a person, manage metadata, lookup, and location. Because as an example, the person or group field type has identity, it has the account information, and then the display title information in the same column. So it's kind of if you just do it to string, if you would be running to string, you would actually get not just the display name, you would get something else. And this one basically walks through how do you split that, how do you extend, how do you get explicit subset of information available, for example, employee.title or employee.id. So in this case, employee would be the user field. Really cool stuff. Then Victor Villain had a simple Teams app, single sign-on with Microsoft Graph. So in an option to do single sign-on in the Microsoft Teams using using his own package which is the Teams Simple Auth, which is a new package available, making things also easier. And then the storyline here is also using the Microsoft Teams FX utility, which will help on the client side as well. So really good blog post for sure for those who are making this, who want to make this happen. So finally, this is now doable. Whenever we started with Microsoft Teams, it was pretty complex to get the authentication bits and pieces in place, right? So we are getting there. Maybe at some point we don't need to worry about the single sign-on and authentication identity. It will just magically work. That would be the ideal world. Now, Liam Cleary had two different blog posts, so related to Microsoft Graph PowerShell, and so backticks versus splatting versus class object. So basically, what are the different ways what are the different ways of setting values or creating objects or creating information using the Microsoft Graph PowerShell? So here we can see new user display name being and then here's the actual new user being used as a parameter or as an object. So how do you do all of these things as when you're using the PowerShell Graph PowerShell module? Whatever we call it.
Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK.
Yes, that's what we're calling. Thank you. And then there was another one which is around filtering, working and failures. So how the filtering is actually working and what's failing and the learnings around that. So he's doing a really good job on now writing down the learnings and understanding how things are working with the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK. So really good stuff.
Yeah.
And then two videos, one from Paolo related on adaptive card extensions and data binding. He's now running through this pretty awesome actually set of videos focusing on the Microsoft Viva connection extensibility explicitly for the mobile experience. So there's a lot of 5 to 6 to 10 minute videos where he's explaining those different concepts. So really, really cool stuff for sure. Let's see, there was a video, where was it? There we go. So basically showing how to tie into a list data and then surfacing that inside of an ACE. One thing to call out maybe here for those who are not super familiar with the ACEs is that the ACEs are intended to be used through mobile. So that's why this kind of a rendering looks a bit strange, maybe if you're not familiar with the implementation. Hey.
Why? Looks good.
Well, looks good for me. Ship it. And then the last video was from April Dunham, a really good video related on how to build pretty Power Apps people picker with Office 365 users. So she had a video recently related on how to make things look prettier or pretty in Power Apps. And then this one focuses on building that pretty people picker control in Power Apps to make things look nicer. And as you are selecting a user and then using that user in your application. So really good blog post as well. Sorry, really good video as well. That's right. But that's it for this week, what we're going to go through. Obviously, there was a lot of other articles and things happening as well. Internally, we can pretty much expect now this week to be a bit more quieter because it's Ignite next week. So everybody is waiting for that to happen. So we'll see what we're going to do next week on next Monday on the PnP Weekly. What's happening on your side? Anything interesting this week?
Ignite preparations for one.
That one. Yes. Oh, we do have a session. That's true.
Exactly. So we will talk about what?
We'll talk about the Viva connection. Surprise, surprise. Viva connection.
Accessibility. Yes. So that is
massive
one.
Surprise, probably.
As Vesa said, we shipped already the learning path. So the next part is to reach out actually to all of you, to hear from you whether you like it, whether there's anything that we can improve, and what's most important, what would you like us to add next, right? Are there features in the way you build extensions? Are there specific things that you would like to learn more about? Because the cool thing about it is that a learning path gives you this structured way to learn, right? So there are blog posts, videos that give you the quick insight into the features or the specific things. Like if you're interested in how do I do X? How do I do this specific one thing? But if you want to have a bigger overview, I think a learning path is a great way to learn it. So yeah, we're curious to hear more from you. What would you like to learn? Other than that, we're working on continuously evolving CLI for Microsoft 365 with new features, new improvements, and enhancements. That is in progress. And other than that, it will be, I think, a few days or a few hours for me to get back for air and think about, okay, what do we want to do next? Because the last few weeks were primarily all about the learning path, getting that out on time.
Yeah, exactly. And getting, for me, it's been the SPFX 1.13, getting that one out, and now then following up on if there's any issues on that one, and then setting up 1.14 preview is coming quite soon as well. So because we already know there's new stuff which is still pending there, which we delayed there intentionally to avoid issues, avoid too many things happening in 1.14. So yeah, that should be good. Ignite, of course, Collab Summit preparations need to get started. So a lot of stuff actually. So my calendar is looking pretty busy. So which is, I guess it's a positive thing. So there's things to do.
It is absolutely. And I guess at times it's interesting. I think the other day I talked to somebody where I said, like, it comes very much in waves, right? I mean, there are times where you're busy and you basically don't look beyond the pile of work you have immediately now because it's so much. So you don't even think about tomorrow because you know you're doing X, you're doing this. And then at some point you're done and you're like, okay, what am I doing next? Because for the last 3 weeks, you didn't even take a moment to think about the next thing because you were busy doing this, right? And now you're free and you're like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
So I guess that is a bit of that time now.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Anyway, so I guess that's fine for this one. Thank you, Simon, one more time for joining us today. That was a really good discussion. Would have been really good. We need to get you back, or we need to continue that discussion in Collab Summit.
Asynchronously.
Fair point. Asynchronously. Yes, indeed. But we'll be coming back with the new PnP Weekly then again in weeks. Thanks for everybody watching or listening, and give us feedback. #PnP Weekly in a Twitter, so we'll know about your articles, and in general, feedback is always welcome. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.